All right, as I situate this camera, I'm introducing the newest project. This is the Yukon Denali. Basically, I have an issue where it's overheating, and we drive this car an awful lot. So I think I got you situated. We'll make that work. So we've been driving this car for a very long time, and it started overheating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start teardown. We're going to take the heads off, the headers, were the manifolds, and we're going to actually add headers to this motor, and I'm going to actually build it up a bit. So my goal is to start tearing it down, figure out what went wrong, and then we're going to do a live build on the motor. So for now, I'm going to begin taking the intake off, figure out what else can come off. So I got to take the coolant lines off, take the water pump off, and we'll just kind of get started there. So I'm going to begin there and go as fast as I can here because we won't have a lot of light. So here we got the harness, which if you know LS is pretty familiar with how the harnesses work. These green clips just kind of pop up on the injectors, and then you clip them out. And then there's a single plug on the coils for the harness. Just take those off, no big deal. I've had this intake off a few times. One was for oil pressure sensor, I believe we changed. Okay, we have a ground strap on the front of the head here. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that. And then I will continue proceeding with what I'm tearing down. So the harness, as I said, on the injectors, you have this clip here. It's a little green clip. You just slide it up, squeeze here, pull it off. And then you have the throttle, just a quick slide back clip, pull out. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is remove this ground strap, get everything completely out of the way. I have to unbolt the full accessory drive. I got the water pump hanging. And then I will remove the alternator and all the evac lines and fuel line. We're going to get this ready to pull out because, as I mentioned, this thing was overheating. And it's time to tear it apart and possibly start looking at a rebuild. So I'm going to go ahead and just begin tear down on this. The harness is step one. So I'm just going to continue and proceed. So as I mentioned, there's a ground strap on the front of the head. It's bolted in right here. It's a 15 millimeter bolt. So we'll just get that off of there and out of the way. Perfect. So the ground actually goes to the battery, and then the other one goes to the harness. It's actually for injectors and coils. And my family just pulled up, so if you hear my kids say hi, they just got home from school. Okay, and then the alternator has a plug, a two-prong plug on the front, and then it has a 10 millimeter that holds on the actual power wire that goes back to the junction box in the back firewall. Okay, looks like the map, which is right here, it's a single bar map, is unplugged. Got the evac solenoid right here. We'll unplug that. And then we'll start unplugging the injectors on this side. So before I work on cars, I like to spray the motor down. I don't like working on oily mess. So this one's not too bad at all. All right, so harness is almost completely out of the way. As I mentioned, my family's home, so you might hear my kids. All right. Some of these injector clips get stuck in the back. Just be patient. Okay. Now I need to go get some pliers, some channel locks, and I'm going to start taking off the heater hoses, which go on the side of the water pump. And then you got the top and bottom radiator hose, and then I can remove the water pump pretty quick. Then we'll take off the steam port and take off the overflow bottle. All right. Sometimes it's easier to use channel locks if you want to keep the clamps shut while you kind of wiggle it off, because things don't like to just come off easy after years of driving them. So just got to get adjusted to where I need it. Fries are done, as Costa would say. All right, let's see. Sorry, just got to get it positioned correctly. Fries are done. All right, here we go. It's hard to get into that spot, so I'll just use these. If you hear the traffic, it's a busy day up here. Okay, there we go. Getting that off the pump. Okay. Get these two down here off, and then we'll proceed to the intake. And in order to do that, we got to take the water pump and accessory drive off. And hopefully it won't take too long to tear this thing down. So my plan with this build, we're going to do headers on this. I'm going to do basically a 408 stroker kit. Kind of, it's not a 408 because it's a 6.2, but Texas Speed offers a stroker kit for this motor. I'll have to share the details in the description when I order it. But I'm going to do it with a little lower compression because I plan on throwing a LSA on this motor. We'll decide. But for now, we got to get it apart and see what's wrong. I was going to turbo it, but I want torque, not horsepower. Okay, just get that clamp. Like I said, this stuff's been on here a while, so some of these hoses are extremely tight. So the L92 was an earlier model Yukon Denali 6.2 liter based off the LS3 engine. It's not an LS3, but a lot of people sell them as an LS3. Reason they do is it's an all aluminum 6.2 liter block. However, the internals are completely different. Cam's different, has DOD, AFM, all that crap on it. So if you see an L92 and someone's calling it a LS3, it is not an LS3. However, the L92 was a stout motor. I believe it was 403 horsepower, like 420 foot-pounds of torque, I believe. Not a bad motor. Pretty stout. And then you could do some minor things to them and get them over 500. This one is bone stock. There ain't nothing done to this one. So hopefully my wife likes it after I crank it up a little bit. But if I'm taking it apart, I'm not just going to go stock. Sorry if you hear my turkey. He's annoying. I named him Thanksgiving dinner for the obvious reason. Okay. Sorry, these hoses are all really tight. So there we go. So the water pump is now removed. I'll show you what that looks like here. If you don't know. So here's the water pump. You have the heater hoses here. And when you do a swap, you actually get a bypass hose that goes like this in a loop. That bypasses the heater hose. And then you got the top and bottom, and this is the thermostat housing. So if you're not familiar, that's what that is. All right. Now we have the steam port line, which comes to the front. What that means is the LS heads or crossflow, they actually have a steam port to release the pressure inside the heads. All of them have it. You got to have it. So if you swap, please don't skip that step. I see a lot of people that do. It's not smart. One thing about the LS motors too is when you're bleeding the coolant system, they tend to get a lot of trapped air. So if you're going to do it right. Get a vacuum gauge or a vacuum pump and pump that out of there correctly. And that steam port has been on there a long time. I wonder if I should just cut it because I'm going to replace this line. Yep, I'm going to cut that one because I'm going to replace that line since it's so hard. Chances are I'll replace all these, but just in case, we'll do it correctly. All right, so here is the heater hose as well. It's the bypass. This goes to the water pump on that loop section that I mentioned. This goes on the overflow tank and then goes back to the heater core. It goes into the firewall. Let me make sure you guys can actually see what I'm talking about. Good. All right, here is the overflow tank. This goes into the top of the radiator over here. So all you got to do is take that off, and that's it to the overflow tank. It's nothing to it. I can find out where I set my tool, make it a lot easier. Anyway, I guess I'll use the channel locks. Okay. Let's get that sucker off of there. What's funny about these cars is you see them scrapped a lot when the motors go bad. It's kind of ridiculous considering how easy it is to build an LS. These cars are great cars. All-wheel drive, 6.2 liter, good horsepower. They tow fantastic. I tow my 24-foot boat with it, and I have no issues. Yes, I have a diesel, but sometimes I just want a family car to cruise, and that's what this is for. All right, so all the heater hoses are disconnected other than at the back wall. We'll get those off in a minute. This, like I said, I'm going to cut off, so we'll grab a knife here in a second. The bottom AC compressor has a small tensioner down here. So I'll grab the camera here in a second and show you what that is. Sometimes they don't have a tensioner, and when they don't, you actually are better off just cutting the belt off and then putting a new one on when you go back into it. But this one has a tensioner. It's really easy to get off. I always recommend changing it when you're in here because it's behind everything and below everything. So it's really hard to get to. So let me show you that. Here is the AC compressor on the LQ4s, I believe it was, and a lot of other motors. They actually didn't have that tensioner. So if you look real close, there's a tensioner. They actually had to be stretched onto the harmonic balancer, which is, I think my CTSV actually has that. So what you do is you turn the motor as you're sliding it on. And so you kind of rotate it slowly and get it onto the groove. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And then the alternator needs to come off. So I'll grab a 10 millimeter and a 15 millimeter. We'll go ahead and start removing all this. I'll slide it aside since the power steering pump has the hoses connected to it. And we might not even have to remove that completely from the car. So I'll go ahead and start removing that. Won't take me too long. Situate here. Sorry, I don't have my usual equipment for recording, so this is just what you get. All right, I'm gonna slide you in a little closer. There we go. Hi, everybody. Let me get you guys situated. I'm having issues with this camera. All right, let's start with there for now, and then I'll grab the stuff. So I got a 10 millimeter I got to get, and a knife. All right. Hope everyone's doing good today, by the way. Thanks for joining my live feed. A lot of people dropped because of the camera. See, you got to be quick. Got to be quick with this stuff. All right, so I'm going to begin now. We'll cut the steam line off here. Like I said, I'm going to replace it. Slide it to the side. I'm going to go ahead and remove this section here real quick. Didn't grab my 10 millimeter, that's fine. You can just use these. They're not very tight. There we go. It's already loose. So like I said, it's just a power. Goes over to a junction box. Sends feed to the fuse box over here. Back to the battery. Pretty simple. Replaced this alternator last year, so don't think I'll have any issues there. I don't believe there's any bolts behind the power steering pulley. Nope, doesn't look like it. Good. Saves me a headache. So go ahead and loosen these. There's one. There's two. There's one on the bottom. I'll do that next so I don't have it flopping on me. Here we go. Here's one on the bottom. Real tight. There we go. Okay, and I'm pretty sure this last one will make it loose. Yep, so there's 4. 3 in the head, 1 in the block. We'll slide that out of the way. Quick and simple. Now, I don't want to lose the power steering fluid, so we'll just kind of set that there for now, and then I'll figure that out in a minute. Here's my water pump gasket. So now I have access here. I can actually get to the coolant temperature sensor, which is on the side of the head here. This is almost completely loose. And then the evap solenoid goes here on the front of the intake. I don't like breaking these lines, so I'll take them off. They have a little clip that you slide to the side, and then it'll come right out. Take it off. Trust me, you don't want to break your stuff. Okay, I'll take this off too. This is the other side of the evap solenoid. That's it. Slides down on the fuel rail, pop it right off. Now that's almost completely removed. There's a vacuum line on the top of the intake that goes to the valve cover on the backside. Again, sorry about that annoying bird. Let's see here. On the front of the motor, I removed the cam position sensor, which goes across the front here. And then there's actually the DOD in the front. And then there's a couple 10mm bolts. So like I said, I need to get this off the AC compressor and out of the way so I can continue working up here. You can use a 3/8 ratchet for that. So I'll just show you what you would do if you didn't have that tensioner. The reason I'm doing this is it's already dry cracked. If you don't have that tensioner, cut it off. Trust me, you won't regret it. So here is the AC belt, and as you see, they get worn out really, really bad. This one, when you flex a belt, when you bend it backwards, you'll see cracks inside of it. You can't see it from this distance, but you squeeze it like this and you'll see cracks. And when they're really bad, you can actually see grooves on the flat side. So make sure you replace this, because if this snaps and you lose your AC, it could do more than just lose your AC. You can actually knock the other belt off. And that would suck on a road trip. All right, so we're making a lot of progress here, actually. Didn't expect to get through it this quick. So what I want to do is get it to the point where we can get the intake off and start beginning with the heads. So I'm going to go ahead and take the coils off so that we have more access to everything. There's a single plug on the coils, like I said. They have their own harness built into the assembly, so if you pull the spark plug wires off, we'll just do it from the coil packs themselves. And then I will go grab a 10mm socket. I'm grabbing that right now. So they have numerous 10mm on the top. They go into the valve cover. Nice thing about the LS is since they're on the valve cover, it makes it centralized and easy to service. Negative is if you do headers, people tend to burn their wires. Don't be that person. Why is my 10mm spinning on there? That is strange. I've never seen a 10mm do that before on these. Aha! Don't let people borrow your tools. My 10mm socket is destroyed. Grab another one. Let's see here. I assure you, LSs are easy. 10mm for water pump bolts, 10mm for valve covers, coils, 8mm for intakes. Just get a metric set if you're going to work on an LS. Everything's metric on them. Oh, here's the bolt for the coils. They're actually a stud on the other end. All right, let's get that off. Just keep progressing. So I'm a dealer for Texas Speed products. That's why I'm going to use a Texas Speed rotation assembly and camshaft. I'm going to throw Johnson bleed down lifters, because lifters are big issues in these. If you use a Johnson, I think they're 8116, I'll have to double check the part number, lifter, they're fantastic. They almost eliminate the noise that LSs give you, which is called sewing machine. And I'll explain that here in a minute. But here's the coil pack. Excuse me. These are the truck coils, the heatsink truck coils. The reason they're round. But this is a different style than the heatsink, actually. Yeah, this is a different style. The heatsink ones actually have a legitimate heatsink on them. So yeah, these, I'll find out the part number on these. I can't remember these ones off the top of my head. But anyway, they all come on a valve cover just like this. They have bolts in the same position. And this is for all LSs before the L86, L83, all the new LT styles. This is exactly how they had it. The new LTs, I believe they bolt directly to the valve cover without this bracket. But this is the harness that goes to each one. And if you ever need to know, the harness is actually color coded. So you know which goes to which cylinder. And so you got a red, green, there's like a light blue, and then purple in the back. I actually just noticed this one has some chafing, which that could cause a misfire. So I'm going to be replacing this harness when I do the motor. You wouldn't believe how many small issues like that I run into on people's cars where they don't even realize they have a misfire. And it's all because of chafing, animals, being too rough on it, whatever, heat. Great, I get to climb in there. Oh, that's fun. Good thing it's my car. There we go. All right. That is almost completely disconnected. So I'll remove the coils on that side, and then I'm ready to take the intake off. So we'll just pop these wires off real quick. Start taking, oh, this turns off. This is the filler. This one's really old and dirty. I'm gonna replace that sucker. Look at that. She's oiled up and been in there for ever. This is in the way. That's why they're studded. You can put accessories on them. So this has a nut. It goes on one of the coil brackets, and then this holds the heating hoses. So let's get those out of the way. And I'm not bagging and tagging things because I build tons of LSs. I have more bolt kits than I know what to do with. And I can tell which bolt goes where just by looking at it. There you go. Look how corroded that is. It's a high mile motor. It's time for a fresh. 1, 2, and 5 total. It's gonna get tight back here in a minute. All right, there's a clip back here. See, this is another example for these. They put a lot of stuff on these studs. This is a wire holder that slides onto it. You can clip it on and off. And that little zip tie on there. Yes, anybody that complains about zip ties on hot rods, that's hilarious because zip ties come from the factory. So if it's not good enough for the factory, then whatever. I use zip ties if I have to, and I'm not upset about that at all. There ain't nothing wrong with zip ties. And it's cold up here. I don't know what it's like where you guys are at, but it's already turning into winter. I live on a mountain though. So this back cylinder, which is cylinder number 8, it is really tight back here. So when you get in that scenario, the best thing to do is get yourself a swivel-headed ratchet wrench, and then you can easily kind of get your fingers back there. So I'm going to go grab that ratchet wrench real quick. See if there's any questions. What's up, guys? Good to see you guys. All right, let me go ahead and grab that ratchet real quick. All right. So if you're ever going to work on an LS, this is your best friend right here. Look at that. Swivel-headed ratchet wrench. They get to all the impossible places that you can't reach. And as I said, 10 millimeters everywhere on an LS. All right, let me see if I can get my hand back here. I'm telling you, it's directly against firewall. They probably could have packaged this better, but whatever. Let's see here. Almost got it. One thing I like about the all aluminum blocks is I don't seem to have corrosion issues, at least not in Denver. I got a buddy in Florida that has a ton of corrosion issues with aluminum. It's like a white powder, guessing from the salt maybe. Okay, here we go. Sorry guys, I'm feeling it, I'm not even seeing it. But there's other ways to do this, by the way. You could take some fender flares, or not flares, but the inner fenders out. You can get through the bottom side, or you could struggle like me and prevent tearing it apart. I like that idea. As you see, it's loose. Maybe I can slide it aside to get more space. So I'm gonna, like I said, use Johnson lifters in this, 8116, I believe. They are 35 to 45 preload. If you know what that is, it's a plunger inside of a hydraulic lifter that when the push rod gets to zero lash, which means it can't move anymore with the rocker without any pressure, you continue down 0.035 to 0.45 preload so that the plunger goes midway between the lifter's plunge, if that makes sense. So that's what they are. They're shorter, so your push rods extend a little longer. Standard is 7.40. With the Johnsons, they're typically, and don't guess on this because everyone has to be measured, and I'll show you how that works when I build this motor. But they're typically 7.55, 7.62 range, give or take. But like I said, don't guess on that if you're building one. Measure it correctly. It's actually quite simple to do. All right, so there's 3 10 millimeters on top that hold the harness to this. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay. And if it gets too dark, we'll just continue tomorrow. But we're gonna go as far as we can. Tag and tag this if you don't know what these bolts go to. It's good practice. Okay. Once this intake comes off, we have so much clearance it isn't even funny. So cam-wise, I think I'm gonna go with the Texas Speed Stage 2 blower cam. Reason being is, like I said, I wanna do a blower on it. You guys tell me, if you don't think I should do a blower and I should do an NA build, tell me. I'd love to do a really torquey NA build someday, and this might be the one for that. So if you guys want me to do an NA build that's crazy, we'll try for, we'll aim for a 750, 91 octane NA build. I think that'd be really sweet. You guys tell me, blower or NA? I do blowers all the time, so let me know what you think. All right, so I don't know if I have my fuel injection clips here. It might be at my other shop, so I'm gonna have to go check. Otherwise, I will get it off one way or another. So you guys hang on a second. I'm gonna go grab my fuel injection clips. 1 second. Let's see here. Okay, so my fuel injection clip kit is at my other shop. So you guys get to see what it looks like to struggle with fuel injection clips when you don't have the right tool. What you do is you get a lot of tiny screwdrivers and then you get yourself angry because it's gonna fight a lot. But basically you push the clip to the side as best as you can. I know that you can't see what I'm doing, but there's some clips on the inside. You just kind of push them to the side. Get it out of the way of the lip. And hopefully she pops loose. I'm hoping to hurry up so I can watch the Nuggets game tonight. I know it's just a preseason game, but die hard Nuggets. If you're not a Nuggets fan, sorry. Not a basketball fan, sorry. All right, so there's 3 of them, it looks like, on this one. I said it's fighting me. It's fighting me pretty good. All right, we're almost there. Almost there. Okay, I think I'm almost there. Now, if this was a salvage yard, they cut everything to give you these motors. They cut the fuel lines, they cut the wiring. So keep that in mind if you ever go to buy a used motor. You're probably going to be pretty frustrated if you needed that stuff. Because ironically, everyone buys the standalone harnesses. I could show you in a video in 20 minutes how you can get a stock harness standalone. Let's see here. Man, I wish I had my right tools here. Get the right tool for the job. Or struggle, like me. There we go. It's starting. If you don't know what I'm struggling with, be happy. Because it sucks. Oh yeah. In the eyeballs, that's great. All right. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna spray a little water in my eye real quick, but I'm gonna get an 8mm and pull this sucker off. You're gonna want a 1/4-inch 8mm ratchet wrench and an extension. So I'm gonna grab that real quick. All right, and while I come back, I'm going to show you some of the ratchet wrenches that I like to use on an LS. This is a really stubby one for the manifold. There's a hole in the coolant hose. Huh. Okay. Yes, it has a bad head gasket. Probably. May not be a bad head gasket, actually. In worst case scenarios, I see cracked blocks, but I'd be really shocked. Unless my wife overheated it and didn't tell me. But she'd tell me probably. So I use this on the front side for more torque, and then I use this on the back side if you can't get to it. So just keep that in mind, little shorty. There we go. Be quick. Oh, and by the way, I should say wear safety glasses if you're gonna take off stuff, but that's just because you should. I never do, unless I'm cutting metal, but you probably should. All right. Seems longer than it is. This really isn't that bad. So there's evidence of a mouse being in here, which sucks. Stupid things, man. Bane of my existence. I hate those creatures. That's what happens when you live in the mountains. So these motors, like I said, even though they're not LS3s, they're freaking good motors. They have the 823 rectangle port heads. Those are good heads. Obviously, there's better, but these are going to get sent off to Texas Speed. I do a lot of my own heads, but for my price, I'm not going to share that, but for my price, they port and polish and change the springs and do all that for a heck of a deal and gain quite a bit of power. So I'm going to take advantage of that because why wouldn't I? So in the comments, let me know. NA 750 horse build, something crazy. LSA swap for torque, not so much power, but for torque. What do you guys think? Tell me your thoughts. And I'll do that. I actually have an NA 6-liter that made 830 the other day. It's a lot of compression, so you can't run 91 that safely. You can for short distances, but not that safe. And then I have a 5.3 with an LSA that's sitting on a engine stand back there. I considered throwing in here, but I don't feel right throwing in a 5.3 in replacement of a 6.2. Seems kind of dumb, if you ask me. So you guys tell me, NA, blower. I'll check here in a minute. All right. So shockingly, this side wasn't terrible. I think I got all of them pretty much situated. So you gotta want to slide them up because they'll get stuck inside the hole. Okay, these ones. If I go NA, I'll probably remove this manifold and go low profile on it. Not sure what manifold I'll pick if I go that route yet. Okay, next. Here we go. So I have a set of headers. They're hooker competition headers. I had Cooks for it, but the Cooks went on another project, so went ahead and ordered some hooker headers. And no, I'm not saying anything about a hooker. I'm talking about headers. Look them up. It's an old school brand. It's been around forever. Oh, and I finally started the Chevelle the other day with the turbo motor, the 427 LSX. Thing runs really good. Got my drive shafts measured out. Hopefully we'll be able to take that for a cruise soon. Stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you can. Helps me. All right. Shockingly, I may not have an issue. I'm almost, oh, sweet. I was able to get them all. So let me loosen this one. And then I'll show you how clean this area gets when you take this behemoth off. These manifolds are tall, and the tall manifolds with the longer runners tend to make more torque. You can watch Engine Masters if you know what I'm talking about. They do long runners for torque, short runners for horsepower. Also depends on if it's boosted or NA, but usually that's the rule of thumb. Long runners torque, short runners horsepower. Okay, I think I got it. It's not just going to be straightforward, trust me. Probably going to have to fight it a little. See how my day is going. There we go. Oh man, that was as easy as it gets. So on the back side here, the reason I'm not coming completely out. Oh man, got some mice. I'm gonna take this off on the back side. There's actually a port on the back for the brake booster, just like even old school motors have that. Theirs are generally carburetor or whatever, or directly on the back of the intake manifold on a 350, whatever. Okay. There's this little plastic cover in my way, so be patient. Here we go. I love these old Denalis. These things are sweet. I like driving them. The new ones are pretty nice too, but I see so many people that don't know how the LT motor works and the direct injection. Oh man, they constantly have issues with those things from the factory because of the cylinder shutdown and stuff. I'll do a video on the LTs and walk you guys through that. All right, so there's the manifold. You got, this goes to the valve cover. This is the map sensor, a single bar map sensor. You got the fuel lines, the fuel rail, and then on the back side here, behind this cover, is a port for the brake booster. You have an extra vacuum line here if you do a swap. This goes to the evap solenoid, and then there's a bracket that goes to the evap solenoid as well. So we'll get that sucker out of the way. We're one step closer. Oh man, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I have a lovely mess of mice turds. It's lovely. So I'm gonna get my vacuum, clean it out, and then I have to disconnect the crank. Let's see, not the crank, the oil pressure sender off the back of the valley cover. This is the valley cover right here, and the oil pressure sensors on the back side. If you know anything about these motors, you'll know that the oil pressure sensor has a little screen, a little plastic like screen with metal or whatever. That gets clogged and people get low oil pressure. A lot of people trade in their car thinking they have a bad motor, and it ends up being that screen. Just grabbing the vacuum cleaner here. Clean this sucker up so I can begin on the heads. So the exhaust manifolds have a small tick, which means I guarantee you one of the bolts broke off. They tend to do that. When the bolts break off, you get an exhaust leak, yada, yada, yada. Happens a lot on LS motors. Just is what it is. Oh, great. Vacuum cleaner just broke. All right, well, let's just move on from that. I guess I'll deal with shit. Okay, so what I'd like to do now, I'll unplug that oil pressure sensor. Okay. The steam port has a line going from one side to the other. So we need to remove that, get it out of the way. It's also 10 millimeters, and I'll show you what they look like. The backside doesn't have a crossover. On an LS1, they have one that goes from the front to the back with a center pipe kit. This one does not have that. So here's what these bolts look like going through the steam ports. As you see, there's a little neck here. That's where the steam port goes and then threads into the head. I'll show you once I get that off why. You can get a steam port upgrade kit online for pretty cheap. On my website, you can get it elsewhere. They're just little braided lines front to back. It's just much better for the motor to have it go to both ends, but it's not a performance upgrade, so a lot of people don't even bother. Let's see here. It's a save your motor upgrade for steam, especially in high horsepower builds. Let's see here. Sorry guys, this is time consuming when you don't have the right tools again. Okay, here we go. Here's the crossover steam port. Come on. There we go. So, the reason there's a neck is it doesn't even need to thread through that section. So this is the steam crossover pipe. I may or may not put it back on. I may or may not get the upgraded kit. This one has a bad O-ring anyway. It goes here. Oh, lost that bolt. Got plenty of them though. So anyway, we'll set that aside and decide later. All right, so what do we want to do next? I think it's probably time to start working on the exhaust manifolds. They're going to be a bear for me. Probably going to snap most of them off. But whatever. Got to do it eventually, so I guess now is the time to do it. For those that are LS enthusiasts, I'll take you in here and show you how nasty this motor is after 220,000 miles. This is the this is my culprit. Bad head gasket or a cracked head or a guide or what it's going to be, but this is the problematic side. So with BB blasters ticking as well. So all my issues are on the driver's side. So let me go ahead and set you back down. I'm going to go ahead and get a tool to begin loosening those. So give me 2 seconds to grab that. These are 15 millimeters, by the way. Okay, so again, get some ratcheters, get the regulars. All right. Oh, they're 13s. All right, sorry, my mistake. Grab a 13. If you buy a metric set, you can do an LS. I've said that before and I'll say it again. All right. So we'll begin busting loose all these exhaust manifold bolts here. Oh man, I need to put tools away. I'm not usually outside, I'm usually on my lift, but my lift is taken. Okay, there's one, not broken. There's two not broken. Exciting. Oh, three's broken. Go figure. Knew that was going to happen anyway. So I'll show you a trick. As you see, that doesn't want to bust loose, and most of these are not going to want to. Just take another wrench. Easy peasy. See that? Get quite a bit of torque doing that. These things are tight in here. For some reason, the header bolts are always the ones that have an issue. The extreme heat of these, I guess, but I don't know. It seems to only be on LSs I deal with that. I take that back. 6.7 Power Stroke diesels, they tend to break on the manifold side because they're on the top of the engine. Kind of a cool design, but they tend to break pretty easy. Okay. So once I get it to a certain point, use this and proceed. All right, I'm going to show you this because usually they break. I go to a stud and I put a lot of anti-seize on the stud, and then there's a nut that goes over it. That's what I replace these with. As you see, there's an extreme amount of heat that goes through these, and that's why they snap. They corrode and they snap. So if you take them off, throw them in the trash. Do not save them. They're junk. They've gone through way too many heat cycles. Don't reuse header bolts. And these are manifolds, but you know what I'm saying. Don't reuse them. All right. So I'm hoping that I don't have to take the exhaust off the manifold in order to get the head. But if I do, I'm just going to cut it off because I'm not using it. I'm going to headers. All right. Having so much fun out here. Haven't had to work in a driveway in a long time. But the hot rods get priority. You hear that? A lot of vacuum lift in that booster. Just getting this out of the way so I can actually work on this. There we go. I think both of the back ones are broken on this. In many ways, I'm grateful for that because then I don't have to deal with them. The heads are built anyway. Ah, there we go. All right, guys, gals, I'll take this to get off that boot that broke. Look at that. These have heat protectors and all that stuff from the factory. Sheesh. Those suckers on the backside got some heat in them. I've had this car for 10 years, I think, now. And if I recall, I did these wires twice already. I drive a lot, people. Drag racing, boating, I drive a lot. There's another one. Oh yeah, there we go. All right, let's see what kind of space I get with this. Probably cutting the exhaust. No one told me my belt was in my way. All right, let's see here. Now we get this side. I don't want to set it in the poop. Gross. So disgusting. Wish my vacuum cord hadn't broke. Let's see. There's one. Yep, that's broke. Imagine that. I wouldn't reuse wires either. I just heard a Honda Civic drive by. What's funny is when you have a lot of hot rods, people will drive by and rev them. Whether it's a Civic or a Chevelle or a GTO or a CTSV, it doesn't matter. People like to rev their stuff when they drive by. All right, so the dipstick tube is actually in the way. It bolts to the head right above the manifolds. So I'll show you that bolt here. It's a 15. Oh, it's not 15. I took it off. Here it is. Here we go. There we go. That's the bolt that holds the dipstick tube on. It's just a short one. You can buy a bolt kit, by the way, for an LS, a complete one. Pretty cheap, too. Okay, getting that out of the way. Look at that. The sucker's been around the corner. I'm I'm not going to use the dipstick. I'll go to flex tubes when I get headers. All right. So as you saw when I was doing the coils, I have a lot more room on the driver's side than the passenger side. So this one's going to be a bear. But this came loose easy. That's nice. Keep switching. 15, 13, 10, 8. Those are your sizes. Dropped it. Not too worried about it. All right. So the rocker arms, I'm probably going to do a trunnion upgrade or just order some new rockers. They have needles on the inside, needle bearings. They fall apart pretty easy. So what you get is a brass or just a trunnion upgrade in general. I like the brass. The brass upgrade's a really nice upgrade on the trunnions. Just depends on what you're using it for. Like I said, I do a lot of race cars, so that's why I choose some of the stuff I choose. Okay, here we go, climbing in, having fun. Wish I could show better camera angles, but when I'm live, I cannot do that. So the LSZ that I do in one of my videos, if you follow me at all, the 240Z, the full carbon fiber car. We took to SEMA last year. We're not taking it this year, I don't think. We'll see. But we test parts on the LSZ, which is a turbocharged LS 240Z. And I'm going to be installing a carbon fiber interior in that car. I released the video of that pretty quick here, actually. So if you're interested, look out for that one. And my son decided that he wants to race. Excuse me. So we bought a junior dragster, and I'm going to do a video on how to build a Raptor motor for a junior dragster. So that'll be another video. Another one, good. Don't care that I dropped it. Not a big deal. I usually set stuff up here, but I'm not doing that this time. If you haven't worked on a truck before or a SUV, you're missing out. You get the wounds on your stomach as you're leaning over the hood latch. It's nice. Very nice. There we go. Got that boot off. I'm hoping that back bolt is broke. I know that's weird to say that, but I would rather extract that than have to take it out. And it is. So just have one more. Get this lipstick tube out. That's been in there so long. That sucker's in there. It just slides out of the pan. Come on. Just gotta loosen it up. It's been in there for a while. 220,000 miles. It's like, I don't want to come out. This is my home. I don't want to leave my home. Okay. I'm exhausted. I'm going to take a break from that. Let me take this last bolt out. Man, the lift would be nice right now. Get underneath, cut the exhaust off. Standing, it's kind of nice. You don't have a lift, get one. Put it in your driveway. Put it in your dad's driveway. Put it in your neighbor's driveway. I don't care. Just get yourself a lift. I'm doing for cheap on Facebook Marketplace. All right, good. All right, both manifolds are loose. Like I said, I got to get the dipstick tube out of it because it goes through the manifold and it will not come off without that. What I want to do next is I'm going to take the valve covers off and show you guys what the rocker assemblies look like on an LS, which I'm sure you've seen if you watch a lot of videos. LSs are everywhere. They're now the old motors. Never thought I'd say that. But they are the old school motors now. So what I'll do is I'll take off this valve cover here first, bring you in and show you the rocker assemblies on these. And we got to take it off anyway because the head bolts are underneath the rockers, which ride on a girdle. I'll show you in a minute. It'll make sense. So these are 8 millimeters. Valve covers tend to leak because of the grommets for the bolts or the O-rings for the covers. Show you that as well here in a second. All right, these are, you can actually leave them in here, but I want to show you guys what I'm talking about. This is a valve cover bolt for an LS. They have a grommet right here that goes to the top of the cover, and these get cracked after heat and dry weather or whatever. And when they rip here, you'll get just absolutely disgusting messes on your motor. So look for that as a culprit. I'm going to put it back in so I don't lose it. And continue down the line and hopefully have this completely out. By the way, the rockers, I believe they're 8 millimeter as well. I'm doing a lot of aftermarket stuff lately, but I'm pretty sure they're 8. Okay. There we go. Almost there. So if you don't know what an LSX is, when I was talking about the Chevelle and the 427 LSX, an LSX block has extra head bolts on the bottom for the head. And I don't have an example on me right now. I could take you to the car, but I'm not going to, so I got to work on this. But Google it. Google LSX head bolts and the pattern, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And that gives extra strength to the block. Okay. Okay, so let me take this cover off, and we'll see how nasty it is on. So I've never taken this off. See what I mean? Look how tight that is. I have been fortunate enough, I've never had issues with this. Hitting it with the battery. Aren't I smart? Look how tight that is on there. Somebody glue this? Ah, there we go. Wow. I've never seen a valve cover stick that tight on an LS. All right, so here's the O-ring I'm talking about that goes on the cover. Unlike the old school cork gaskets, these are reusable to an extent. Just depends on how many miles are on the motor and how the condition of the O-ring is. These are not going back on, so I'm going to set it aside. Okay. Now I'm going to grab the camera, and I will show you what the rocker arms look like on an LS if you've never seen it. And we'll look at the condition of this motor. Dear Lord, this motor is in great shape. That is clean. Cover the heads. I'm not covering the heads. This motor's getting rebuilt. If it was, okay, that's a good point. If I was not going to rebuild this motor and I was planning on just doing a cam swap or head gasket and cam swap, these would be cleaned, taped off, taken care of. Since this is getting completely removed and rebuilt, and I'm just taking the heads off to send them off to get the port and polish done while I decide what I'm going to do. I have it exposed like this. I don't care. I'm not going to redo the bottom. The bottom end's getting rebuilt. So that's why it's not taken apart and covered and taped and yada, yada, yada. So these are 8mm bolts. They're torqued down to 22 foot-pounds from the factory. I'm going to go ahead and loosen all these, and then we'll take the girdle off. Then I can take the push rods out of this and then start removing the head bolts. And then I'll cut the exhaust off to get to the bottom head bolts. So let me set you back down, and I'll start removing those. I like to do this by hand sometimes just to get an idea on a couple of them. If they were loose, any play. I only do that on a couple just to inspect them. And then once I look at them and have a general idea. So these are the trunnions. The trunnions, they go bad, so you want to change those out. These are actually in pretty good shape. I don't know who had it before me, but they might have done some work to it, but it's pretty clean. Then here's a 7.4 stock factory push rod. These are not going back in either, but this is the geometry, the valve train in a stock LS L92. And then you see the girdle right here that the rocker arm rocked on. So I'm going to set these in a box because they're still good. And then I'm going to grab a socket for my ratchet so I can get them off quickly. Thank you for your patience when I walk away, by the way. But I have to grab tools. All right, so now that we have that off, I have my electric wrench here. We'll keep setting tools, and then we'll probably lose 5 of them when they fall in, especially the 10mm, because that's just how it works. Okay, here we go. It was an 8mm, and I grabbed a 10. Aren't I bright? Okie dokie, I'm back again. I don't have a 3/8 8mm on me right now, so I'll just do the extension. Give it a quick. I'll get this side off, show you what bolts look like underneath. So as no way, I believe it was mentioned, cover these up if you're gonna do a cam swap and leave the motor together. You don't want any debris getting down there. This one already has the mouse shit from the manifold getting in there. All right, and one more. And I'll show you why I'm doing them all at the same time and not taking them off one at a time. So you watch a lot of guys take one rocker at a time. You don't need to do that. Grab the girdle, slide it slow. A couple of the bolts are just a little tight here. There we go. Grab the girdle, grab the girdle. Just like that. You got the girdle, the stand, I guess the rocker stand, call them whatever you want. Girdles actually hold down the studs on the top, but the rocker stand, and you got the rockers all in one assembly. Okay, get the push rods out of there, and then I'll take you in and show you where the head bolts are. On an LS, it's much different than an old school motor. You have, I think they're 15mm head sockets for all those. All right, so here's all my push rods. Doing a quick inspection on them. This motor is actually pretty clean for 220,000. I run Mobile One 530 and everything, unless it's obviously clearance for something else. Then I'll do a 2050 or a Brad Penn or a driven. But on my stock motors, 530 Mobile One lasts forever. Motor stays clean. Everyone's happy. Let's get this out of the way. I'm going to pull you in here again, and I'll show you underneath the stands. You got a head bolt there, and all the way down. And then on the top side, and you have to remove the steam ports to get to these. There's just steam blocks on the backside back there. Woo! You got to remove that in order to get to these bolts. So I got to crawl underneath and decide if I'm going to cut this exhaust real quick so that we can do this, or if I'm going to call it a night. Let me think about it, but for now I'm going to get the other side going. There we go. Froze for a second. All right, I'm going to get to the other side, take the other valve cover off, inspect that, because I bet it's going to be nasty. And I have evidence of that in the intake ports on the driver's side. There's oil gunk and a whole bunch of junk inside there. So that's the evidence that I'm going to have. All right. There we go. So if you're going to delete the AFM, DOD, all that stuff from an LS, you got to replace the covers for the motor. Like on this one, I got to change the valve cover, or not valve cover, the timing cover. There's a sensor on the front side for the phaser. All right, this side is way worse. This thing has had a head swap done at some point. Probably from that dealership I bought it from years and years ago. It's always funny when you take apart a motor and you look at the inside, and you can see the difference. And I'll show you in a minute. Let's just take you in there. Look at this. Here is a head that has been swapped in the past. You can tell, look how clean it is. Look at the springs, everything's nice. You look at the intake ports, they're burning even. Yeah, there's a lot of carbon, but they're burning even. Look at that, not even burning. Lots of nasty junk inside there. And look at this. That is a lot of wear. So this is the original driver's side head on this. Sorry for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue removing that from the driver's side. And then I will see if I have blades to cut the exhaust off tonight and hopefully get this head off. That valve is hanging up. Looking at these rockers, I'm going to be replacing my rockers. I could just do it onion, but I'm replacing them. Man, they stink. My guess is whoever had this before me didn't take care of this motor. And then I did, and it saved its butt for a while. But you can tell when somebody does frequent oil changes and when they don't. This is a worn motor. You know, it's just seeing this on the inside of this valve cover. I've seen worse, by the way. Keep that in mind. I've seen junkyard motors where you take them off and it's just horrible. And people build race cars out of that. So honestly, I could just slap it back together with valve cover or head gaskets and cam and be done. But I want this thing to last and build some good power. So I'm not going to cut that corner. If you have the means to do it, then do it. Rebuild it correctly. There's the girdle. Excuse me, stand. Let's see what these push rods look like. Wow. I'm not sure if you remember the old ones, but look how nasty that one is. So this side is the worn out side, and we can move on from that. I don't even necessarily have to take the head off to know that. You know, I'm getting close. I'm wondering, do we even want to take the heads off? Or do we just want to pull the motor completely out? I'm thinking, now that I'm seeing this, it's kind of a waste of my time, excuse me, to continue taking the heads off just to pull the motor anyway. So I think what I'm going to do is, now that it's getting late, it's getting dark, it's going to be hard to see anyway, I'm going to come back to this and do a live footage maybe tomorrow or the next day. We'll cut the exhaust off, we'll take the torque converter bolts and the transmission bolts out, and then we'll just lift this sucker out of here. Then we'll get it on an engine stand, inspect it as a group, and then decide what we want to do. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all you that are staying loyal to my channel. Thank you for subscribing, those that do. I appreciate everybody, and see you soon in a future video.